Welcome to everybody who's here. I appreciate you being here and viewing this, whether that's right now today or if it's in the future, because we do record these and put them on our YouTube channel for people to view later on. To that point, I will make a promise. I am going to do better at uploading. Last year was a bit crazy, and I just looked at the files that the last upload for our YouTube channel was in February of 25. It is February of 26. I have been working through the backlog, so I am getting there. It will get uploaded. Things are kind of calming down, or at least I'm getting a better handle on it. So I appreciate your patience. And as it stands, there's 37 some odd sermons or up on our YouTube channel about there. They're all about an hour long. These have now been shortened down to 30 minutes, just for focus reasons and that kind of thing. We're taking it a little bit more, following basically a liturgic witchcraft calendar that will be live shortly. My name is Hierophant Andrews. I am with the Church of Witchcraft, obviously. I've been practicing for a number of years, most of my life basically, and I practice witchcraft of more of a chthonic kind of aspect. It's morphing a little bit from the celestial as it's been standing so far. And then last month, for those who didn't know, we talked about planning and navigation magics and that kind of thing. Like, how do we project out in our life what we want to do? And so this follows in that stead. So the question tonight is, how do we maintain our projects? That's a really big question for us. And furthermore, how does our witchcraft connect to that maintenance of our projects? So think about this. There's a flame that never extinguishes. Even in the coldest winter, when the earth is still and quiet, beneath that frost, seeds are waiting. Beneath the soil, life is preparing. And beneath our moments of doubt or delay, intention is still alive. Tonight we speak of that enduring flame, the fire that sustains our projects, our growth, as well as our craft overall. And so we return to that question of, how do we maintain our projects and how does our witchcraft connect to that? And that has to do with how our rhythms work. Witchcraft doesn't work in straight lines. It works in cycles, like I'm sure most of you have found out by now, whether or not you're new or experienced. However that goes, you realize that these things move in cycles, and being attentive to those is really important. We don't force any of this stuff. We want to flow with it. Much like we said last month in our navigation, we want to work with the waves that we're navigating, right? And we don't also conquer anything. We want to align with what our intention is and what our motivations are and what our projects are. And that's really important. We want to get away from kind of that patriarchal sort of controlling aspect of things. We don't want to be in this dominance this headspace that we have. If we're in that kind of a mindset, it really comes out in unhealthy ways and can get us locked into old patterns and kind of ignore some of the cycles that are in our own lives. Our craft is aligned essentially with the natural world, and the things that are in the natural world. There's some extra natural things, of course. As the earth turns, so do we. As the moon waxes and wanes, so do we. Waxing and waning phases may differ person to person, witch to witch, but still stands to reason that we move with these cycles. As the rising fire intensifies toward Litha, so too does our magic and potency follow. During January, we planted proverbial seeds. These were sown for our intentions. We each made promises to ourselves. We made those under the moonlight, in the liminal spaces. And that was a time of reflection and self-introspection. Really, it's asking, what could we be? That's part of that intention. But intention alone is not sufficient. The seed must warm, and we are at that point now in our year. During this part of the year, the fire intensifies. The northern hemisphere specifically, the days grow longer, light starts to linger. I'm sure some of us have noticed that. I was at college today, and I realized it was still light outside, and I was just thinking about this talk that I'm giving to you guys that I was like, yeah, light is starting to linger more. The earth begins to warm, the sap starts to flow, and our energy also shifts from an inward focus and that inward dreaming to an outward becoming. This is our shift into that manifestation, just as the cycles of our Earth does, specifically the Northern Hemisphere. And this isn't only a seasonal thing. This is a magical thing. Fire is transformation. It is action. It is also sustained will. Projects envisioned in January aren't solely concepts. They request now for movement and our progress forward. Flames of inspiration become the hearth fire of our devotions. And there's a difference in spark and in flame. Sparks are exciting. I mean, I like to see sparklers. I like setting those things up. I like building bonfires, and those sparks are fun and they're exciting. But that flame, the flame after, if you're successful in lighting a fire, of course, the flame is enduring. Many witches have these grand intentions at the beginning of whatever they're doing. Specifically, if we're talking about the beginning of the year in January, we have these grand intentions. What are we going to do? Look at all these possibilities. With our bold circles cast, our feverish journal entries, we create vision boards, sigils, projects, and we start planning things out. It's a rush of possibility, and it can be very heady. But maintenance is a quieter magic. Often it's not glamorous. We tend that fire with no one really watching us or observing. It's a return to the altar after the excitement kind of wanes down, right? How do we get back to that space? We show up for the projects that we have on some random Tuesday when we'd rather scroll on our phones or sleep, or maybe just let that project just kind of fade away because it's a lot easier to do that and not maintain anything. Yet, this is our craft that we're speaking of, the intentions that we set for it. This maintenance is a deeper form of our witchcraft. Witchcraft isn't just about summoning your magic. It's not just about dreamy manifestation. All of those things are fun and we all enjoy them. It is also sustaining our craft. That is part of what we're doing. In terms of the cycles, for example, for me, they're reversed, and for some people, it is also reversed. So in this period of the natural year, I tend to be in a reserved capacity, and towards from Litha on to Yule, essentially, those are my most active months. And so right now, I'm actually in a period of more dormancy and reflecting and those kinds of things. And so this whole section for me is just setting that intention and doing this maintenance. And I wanted to bring that awareness for everybody here too. And so we're talking about the sustaining aspect of our witchcraft. That's a very important part, but not exactly glamorous. It's a sacred tending. You can think of a hearth, the big flame in the middle of the home usually, or at least historically. If you spend all of the wood that you have into this, you get one great glorious blaze. It's brief, it's not very long, and then you're just out of wood, and it's probably cold. But if you feed that hearth instead, slowly, methodically, with your intention, we can warm houses. We can bake our breads. And that's the sustain that we want to do. Projects are a hearth fire. January gave us the logs, if you will, for that fire. Those logs are of clarity, intention, and our vision. And now we have to tend that hearth. We do these things by revisiting our goals with honesty. This one's tricky. We talked about truth and lies a little bit before, a couple months ago. So you need to be honest about revisiting your goals. It's okay if they change, they're going to over time. Specifically, the next thing that you're going to want to do is that you want to adjust your timelines without shame. We have a lot of this judgment piece of, oh, I didn't do this enough, or I'm not witch enough, or I didn't meet my goal, or I missed a moon phase, or what have you. Just adjust your timeline without that shame. You're in the middle of a practice of craft. Practice means doing, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it right every single time. Instead, I want you to perform small, consistent acts instead of dramatic bursts of witchcraft at fits of the highest parts of the year, the equinox, the solstice, any of the cross-quarter days. Those are great times, but you don't want to just lose that momentum in there, especially if you're working with a group or if you're just working by yourself. Stick with it. Those small acts are really important. You need to check in with your spirit as much as you are checking in with your strategy of how you're accomplishing your goals. Witches understand that magic is a cumulative effect. One small spell weekly is better than a grand ritual forgotten. One paragraph daily written becomes a book. One plant watered becomes a garden. And one boundary upheld becomes a life transformed. Boundaries are really important, and you deserve them. Instead of our alignment, we want to align instead of force any of our craft. The things that we're doing and working with this, I can't stress that enough of that alignment. When we're aligned with natural rhythms, maintenance becomes easier. Instead of this, you want to align with that space and resonate in that and go with that flow. As cheesy as it might sound, but that makes your maintenance easier. There are times when those things are coming around, and at the time that it happens, you want to move into that space. Just like some of the ceremonial magicians will pick specific days or specific astral hours, for example, to work. It's because it's aligned and it becomes easier to work that magic, just like maintenance becomes easier as we follow these natural rhythms in our life. Notice that the world doesn't rush like ever, as much as we might want it to. The moon doesn't skip a phase. As far as I'm aware, I have not seen it just go from full, skip the new moon, and just go straight back to full. If it did, I feel like we would have a calamity in our hands. And also, the earth doesn't bloom in one day. It may be blooming out of order in the northern hemisphere now for various reasons, but it doesn't do so in just one day. Growth is gradual. It's also inevitable. Can't escape it. You can try and delay it, but you can also grow the opposite way and start doing destructive things on yourself too. So you have to ask yourselves, where can our projects move with rhythm rather than with resistance, whether that's internal or externally derived? Perhaps you don't need an intensity to the projects that you have, that navigation magic that you've cast. Perhaps it's just the consistency. These are those small acts of consistency. Maybe you don't need to push so hard. Maybe you just return to your why. You remind yourself of that. Those are those small times, that small act of that consistency that we're talking about. Why are you doing the things you're doing? Why is the project still valid to you? Are you really aligned with this still? Does this make sense? Revisiting isn't shameful. Like I said, we're revisiting our goals without shame. Witchcraft connects us to our maintenance and reminds all of us to listen. And I keep saying this, I think I'm going to have to redo this sermon, and I've probably said this before, but I did a whole series on, it's three of them, the eyes, heart, and hands of a witch. It's how we observe, what we create, and how we emotionally connect. I did this really early on, and I think I need to revisit those because I keep bringing them up. But witchcraft teaches us to listen. It teaches us that, it reminds us to have that maintenance. The craft is going to be there. It's not going to randomly vanish. It only vanishes when you stop tending the witchcraft that you have. When you're working with ritual fires, we observe the dance that fire does. We know that if there's too much oxygen, the fire can be blown out. If there's too much oxygen, very possible that the fire just be snuffed out. The same is true for our ambitions. Balance is magical. I'll reference it again in Hermetic philosophy. We're talking about polarity, one extreme to another extreme, and they're sharing a dimension of this paradigmatic dimension between the two of them. Cold on one side, hot on the other, and they're sharing between them. That balance is magical. And it's one way to consider it. You may not need to reignite the flames from January, but we need to do that maintenance. If you feel some stagnation already kind of creeping into the edges there, don't condemn yourself about that stagnation. Though a flame may have dimmed, there's still embers remaining, and those embers can be stoked. And to do so, proverbially speaking, is to remember your vision. What was said? What did you write? What did you cast? You also want to simplify your path forward. If it's too complex of a goal, you'll just stall out because there's too many factors that you're trying to manage, too much that's coming into it. So instead, simplify down. What is the next small step that you can take? That's the next thing you do. Don't give this huge crazy thing. Like, for example, think about your scope of life, right? You don't need to ask, what's the thing I want to accomplish in my life? It's what do I need to accomplish right now? Whether it's this minute, whether it's this day, take these small steps. Those small actions, consistency is the key here. And with that, you can create ritualized actions. Light a candle before work. Call in that focus. Speak your commitments. Even if it's just out loud in your own home and whatever, speak that commitment. It makes it more real. And you want to honor the cycles in your own life. As fires rise, consciously invite that inner fire. Work with your correspondences. They're going to be different for every individual. What things mean what things mean to you and what value they have are going to inform how your inner fire is tended. This is how witchcraft connects us to our maintenance. We invoke the sacred by doing this. Writing becomes ritual. Our planning becomes spell work, and our consistency becomes devotion. And to our inner fire, let's think about that for a minute. We must also tend that inner fire. It's really crucial for us to do. Projects and plans will falter if we're depleted. We mentioned this numerous times before, and it bears repeating. If we're depleted, we can't really do a lot of things. Can't pour from an empty cup. You've heard this, I don't know how many times before in your lives. Witchcraft reminds us of our role in the natural cycles. We're not just machines. To tend that inner flame, we have to react without guilt, which is a really important thing. We want to nourish our bodies and souls, protect our energies from that. Remember, with that boundary in your life, you deserve them, and celebrate the small victories, small steps, consistent steps, returning to it on that random Tuesday. Celebrate those small victories that you have. The craft informs and teaches reciprocity. Just as we offer to the external, we also have to do the same for our internal. We do prayers and whatnot at altars, we burn incense, we do rituals and perform ceremonies. That's all external. But that same tending is for our internal flame as well. Burned out witches cannot maintain a sacred flame. You can step away. This is part of your cycle, knowing when it's not appropriate for you to act and when it is appropriate for you to act. And hearths were generally communal, just like we're doing here, proverbially speaking, of course. We're tending a kind of hearth together. In ancient times, all hearths were essentially communal. Fires were communal. One hearth amongst many could stoke flames, keep fires going. If one flame or one fire started to dwindle, another could rekindle it. And it was a communal project. When we talk about witchcraft, when we're doing these sermons, when we're doing rituals, whenever we're gathered for dark moons or full moons or whatever, all of that is part of tending. And it's important to be at those spaces to work with the community in tending that. Specifically, we don't maintain things alone. As much as you might want to think you do, it's much easier if you're doing this with other people. Hence the Church of Witchcraft and other communities that you might have, whether it's a coven or something else, or your family, whatever it might be. You aren't doing this maintenance alone. You want to share your struggles, speak the truths that you have, witness each other's own commitments. That's part of that accountability that we've talked about in the past too. When you feel dim, you can borrow flame. The same holds true. If you are well tended and you have that heart that's well tended, you can also share that flame for others. Again, that communal connection that we want. Magic strengthens our circles, and this tending, this consistency, this maintenance is part of that magic. And this is a season of becoming, right? As we start moving away from Imbolc, we start getting into the spring equinox, sometimes known as the as Ostara. As the northern hemisphere warms, we move from intention into embodiment, from dreaming to our doing, and from our whispering into action. The season asks us, will you tend what you have created? Not with a frantic energy, but with precision and steady devotion. The enduring flame is not loud, it is faithful. And each one of us is a part of that aspect. And as we kind of close in our ritual here, um, let's talk about our closing devotion. So, right now, close your eyes and then envision your projects. See that as a flame. Notice the color, the warmth, the intensity, and you feed that flame gently. A breath of belief, a circle of support. This is not a wildfire, but a radiant hearth. Feel that difference. This is sustainable magic. It is rhythmic power. This is attuned witchcraft with the turning world. May we be keepers of this enduring flame. Our projects grow as the light does. May this fire warm rather than consume. Tending this flame is sacred. As the fire rises, so too shall we. In commitment, the seed we planted, the anvil is struck, and now we tend, and in tending, we become.